Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel.
And I'm Justin Jacobson from Restoration Games.
We are here at GAMA. We are live. So the reason that it may not look as nice as some of other stuff is because we're not using, the main cameras are actually being used to record different things that are going on right now. There's, I think they're interviewing Genius Games and then Osprey Games, and there's a whole list of things that are going on. But I figured why they're doing that, we might do some live stuff during the day. I'm just going to go grab random people here and bring them in for questions. So we brought in Justin.
Random person number one.
Well, you're like 4 rooms down from us.
Yeah, that's true.
So what we're going to be doing is, if you guys have questions specifically for Justin or about the GAMA show in general, we'll answer them here. Otherwise, since currently no one's watching, we'll talk. And I mean, the biggest thing we want to talk about, oh, no sound. Well, let's get that fixed. I see sound here on the board. Dum ba dum ba dum bum bum. Testing, testing. Can you hear sound? Can you hear sound now? Fixed. Well, looks like there's sound now.
I see sound here on the
Okay. Well, there's sound. Well, there's sound. Well, whatever the reason might be.
All right, good.
Okay. So let's restart. I'm Tom Vasel.
And I'm still Justin Jacobson from Restoration Games.
Right. And so we're not using our big setup. Our rig is in the next room where they are doing recording things. They are doing different interviews. So I figured I would just go over the course of today and tomorrow as I have time. I'll go grab random people, bring them in here. Not random, but I mean game industry people.
High percentage of hitting industry person here.
Well, right, that's one of the benefits. I can pretty much get anybody and bring them in. So we are going to start with. Oh, now there's echoes. Yes. You know, folks, I can read the word echo. You don't need to keep. Let's see if it's. Anybody and bring them in. So we are going to. I know what the problem is. I had that sync offset on there. I don't need it. Now we should be fine. Okay, Yay. So anyway, if you have any questions for Justin about Restoration Games or GAMA, the convention itself, feel free to ask those. So we'll start with the obvious stuff, Fireball Island. We know there's a lot of other, you're working on other games. Fireball Island is a big thing.
Sure.
And the first thing we need to go through, a lot of people are not realizing this is a different game.
Yes. So fundamentally, Restoration Games, as we always say, we don't make reprints, we do restorations. And what that means is that we find whatever the core of that game, or the soul of the game as we call it, get rid of all the other stuff, and then build a great game around it. And so for Fireball Island, nobody remembers the roll and move, right? It's the 3D island, the marbles going everywhere, hitting your friends, all that stuff, the crazy marble shots and things like that. And so we really wanted to play that up. We always try and turn that up to 11, as we say, and then work on building a game that supports that feeling. And so we worked very hard, on Fireball Island to do just that. And it's been an incredible design challenge. I mean, fascinating, totally different from anything else. I know Rob has worked as hard as I imagine he's worked on just about anything other than some of these legacy projects, because it's such a unique design.
Well, one of the biggest problems you have is the physicality of it. The board itself was a neat thing where the little the trays come down, and honestly that's the only reason anyone played the game. So you had to remake that board, somehow fit it into a box.
Right. So the original board is this huge 3D plastic tray, and it comes in a box that no retailer would touch with a 10-foot pole today. So one of the first things we had to figure out was how do we make that island at least as big or impressive as the original and fit it in a real box. And it was actually, so we worked with Mike Gray. He's our guru, as it were, consultant. He's been in the business for a million years, knows every game under the sun. And they were actually over at his house playing with his copy of Fireball Island, and he had this idea of basically taking 3 separate trays that would nest inside the box, so that would fit in the box, but then you put it on the table, and you can stack them in such a way that the island is actually a little bit wider, about roughly the same footprint, but about 50% taller. And obviously the height gives us additional gravity to use to make the marbles go faster. So.
Yeah, and there's also other changes, like there's the marbles are different, I think.
Well, we haven't revealed a lot about the marbles.
Never mind,
but
I'm just kidding.
I'm happy to tease at least a little bit. So yeah, the original marbles were fine. Obviously, they're little red sort of plastic marbles, but marbles we figured we could do better. And so one of the things we were looking at is different types of things we can do. One of the things we announced just this morning, by the way, is that we will have 3 expansions for Fireball Island.
Oh, wow.
So that we literally just about an hour or 2 ago teased. So we've just got 3, silhouetted box covers up right now. And over the next week and change, we'll be sort of talking about those expansions. Those are going to be available in the Kickstarter. By the way, I should mention, it'd be a dereliction of duty not to. April 3rd is the Kickstarter, so make sure you pencil that in on your calendar.
2 days after Easter.
Yeah. And so we have these 3 expansions that we're working on. One of the things we wanted to look at in the expansion is some of the things we can play with. So I don't want to give away anything, but yeah, there are certain objects other than red plastic marbles that'll be in the base game even, and then also in the expansions that might do slightly different things than just a regular old plastic marble.
So now the original game was a roll and move, essentially.
Right.
You rolled, you moved up, the marbles came down occasionally, but half the time they didn't hit people. Is there going to be a better chance of knocking people?
Right. So that was Rob's sort of first design intuition after he got a chance to play it. In the original game, you roll the die and you move. If you roll the 1, you get to do a fireball. If you go to a cave, you just roll the die and see what cave you come out of. There's not a lot of choice or control over your movement and things like that. And then on the other hand, if you rolled the 1 and got to do the fireball, you rotated Volcar to a particular path. All the paths are completely linear.
Right.
And so you knew exactly where the marble was going to go and exactly who it was going to hit. So what was like essentially a fun kinetic element, but it didn't have any sort of the excitement, or it left some excitement on the table, I guess it were. So Rob's first thought was like, we need to flip those. We need to give players much more control, and then make the Volcar and the marbles and the fireballs a little bit more chaotic. So there's that excitement, sort of like the slot machine, like you're waiting, apropos for where we are, waiting for those wheels to stop spinning and see what happens. Now, on the other hand, we didn't want it to be completely random, and so that was a really interesting design development that we worked on. Is we designed a new Volcar, and so one of the first things, I shouldn't say, in the middle of the design, one of the things we tried to figure out is if we could design it in a way so that some of the randomness wasn't just in the paths, because there's only a limited amount of real estate. So we do have some branching paths and different ways you can go and different ways for the marbles to branch. But if we could add some of that randomness, if you will, to Volcar, then that we get to have some of that without taking up any space. And so we developed this sort of interior mechanism inside Volcar. So you drop the marble down into the top of his head, and there's this 3 different channels inside Volcar. Now, most of the time, it's going to go right out the front of his mouth, like just in regular Volcar. But there's a side channel to the left and a side channel to the right, and some of the time it'll scoot left, sometimes it'll scoot right. And so when you get a chance to use Volcar and you line them up, you need to sort of play the percentages and see, well, I might be on the path that's on that right chute. I want to hit this guy who's next to me. I got a good chance of doing it, but there's a chance that I might get hit. And then also when you drop that marble in, you have a lot of this excitement about like which mouth it comes out of and which path it goes down. So we wanted to increase that quite a bit.
Now the board, we've seen the prototype picture of the board online. Someone asked here, the board is all gray. Is it going to be in color?
Of course, yeah. So what we're producing now is these are the prototypes and the renders and things like that. Jason Taylor is our amazing graphic designer. He is actually working on the art for the board right now. The really interesting thing with the board is you actually print on. So the way the process works is a really interesting process, and we're working on like a little mini movie about how all this stuff gets made. That's really cool. And basically, you take a sheet of plastic, and then you can print on that plastic an actual picture, just like on a piece of paper. And then it goes in the vacuum form machine, and it sucks it into this special 3D shape. But it'll have that picture sort of laid onto the 3D shape. So it's not painted, it's actually printed on there.
That's so weird to imagine.
Right.
The thought, like you have to draw this knowing it's going to go into the shape?
Yeah, you sort of have to reverse it. So there's a process where you can essentially use a program where you're drawing on it in 3D, and then the program will sort of reverse engineer what the flat piece needs to look like to get there. And then, of course, it's not exact. You've got to run the actual thing and tweak it and say, oh, this is a little bit too far over and that sort of thing. So it's a really interesting design process.
I don't think this will be done for many board games. Many board games are going to have this three-dimensional board.
It's in retro. It's funny. We always say, well, how come nobody brought back Fireball Island? Like I know now exactly why nobody brought back Fireball Island, among other things. But it's just a really incredible design. I mean, just even playtesting, right? You can't playtest a 3D island. You can't build like a bunch of 3D islands and test it out. And you can only simulate so much on a 2D render of it. But that's what makes it interesting. So.
But doesn't it... I would worry about, okay, we made this island, and now, oh man, we didn't realize the marble rolls down this thing every once in a while. It shoots off this thing. That seems like it'd be hard to... The quality control would be difficult.
It is. It's a long, interesting, weird process, unlike any other game development. And some of that is... So literally what we did is... We worked, so I should mention, by the way, the initial trays were designed by Noah Edelman of Game Trays, who sort of helped lay out the initial conceptual stuff. And then Rob was working with him. But you're right, you can only go so far with like a 3D render. So at some point we started working with a company called Design Innovation, who happens to have an office about 20 minutes from Rob. And they do basically toy design. And so Rob would drive down to their office, and they had a big... So we started with 3D printed of the renders, and then what they do is they take actual clay and add it to the 3D printed models to sort of be able to tweak, like, oh, this path is shooting a little bit too far to the left, so we add a little bit of clay here and do that. So this is weeks, weeks of going down there and play testing on this 3D model, using real marbles and real gravity and all that. And then at the end of this whole process, we've got this ginormous 3D part clay, part plastic. It's sprayed with sealant and all this stuff, screwed down to a big piece of plywood. That gets shipped out to this company. I don't even know what they do other than this or what their core thing is, but they basically do a scan of the whole island. It's like something you would see in like a sci-fi movie where they're like running the lasers over and measuring everything, and it spits out a 3D file. And then that goes to China with our publishing partner Longshore, and then they start working. They're working right now to get these prototype boards of the actual finished thing that we can continue to play on and tweak.
Man, well, some questions. Yeah. Someone said, so vacuum form. You're saying like if you draw an oval, but then it goes up, it becomes a circle.
Yeah, sure. Basically, what it is they create a mold. And then they sort of heat that plastic and enough, or just get it pliable enough, and they create a vacuum where it sucks the plastic into the mold so that it adheres to that shape. And then, and once it sets, basically, sets, it becomes like a regular plastic 3D thing.
Michael asks you, you're going to be doing Meatball Overboard. You're going to be showing this off. I know Jared Honeycutt's going to be going around showing this off. How long is that going to be? I mean,
sure. We're super excited about that. We really didn't know what to do because obviously for a lot of Kickstarters, why don't you just get a bunch of copies, send them out to reviewers and preview and whatever, and then people play it, and we can't do that. The prototype for the island is like $3,000, so we can't just print up 10 of them and
Jared's going to have it handcuffed to his wrist at the different locations.
We're using the Stanley Cup model. We're getting a big trunk and the white gloves and all that, and we're gonna do is starting at PAX East. Just going to be basically taking it and driving around to a bunch of different places. And then he's finishing up in Texas. I know we're planning on seeing you up at the Gathering. Get you a chance to take it out for a turn. And then
that will actually be the last spot it shows up
And then we're going to do some places after that around the Mid-East and Midwest and all that. He's basically going to drive it back home, essentially. So I think my guess is it'll go on for about a month.
Okay.
Altogether.
Michael here makes a joke about the cruise, but it actually brings up a good point. Does the game need to be like totally level to work?
I wouldn't say like 100% level. I mean, it's not like a...
Because obviously you're not going to play it in a total
Right.
house. But most people's tables, if you put a marble on them,
Yeah.
they might tend to roll one way or the other.
Yeah, that shouldn't be an issue. Again, also this is not like a super heavy strategy game where, no one's going to complain if their guy gets hit. That's part of the fun, frankly. And actually, we built that into the game. We haven't talked too much about rules, but when your player gets hit, you lose a treasure, but you get a souvenir.
Excuse me.
And those souvenirs sort of do really cool effects that let you do some fun stuff. So, no, it doesn't need to be like dead on balls accurate or however she said in my cousin Betty.
Well, Trevin asked, is the goal still basically the same to get to center, get the jewel, get back?
No. So that's one of the fundamental things we changed. A couple things. First of all, this sort of simple race mechanic. There were a couple things. One, the way we designed the island, that works best if you have a straight path. And we wanted to give sort of alternate paths to give players more choice, make the marbles more interesting. And then also thematically, we wanted to, like when the game originally came out, it was right on the heels of Raiders of the Lost Ark. This was a really hot theme. But, adventuring on an island and getting a jewel, it's a little bit cliche now. Nothing wrong with it, obviously, but we wanted to sort of freshen it up a little bit. And so what we did is we literally advanced the timeline 30 years and said what would have happened in the interim. And our thought went to basically a big company buys the island, decides they're going to open up an adventure tourism resort on the island. And don't worry about Volcar, we have top people working on it. We should be cleared up by the time we are done with our soft open. And basically the players are the first people who get to be on the island, sort of the VIP. And what they have to do is they have to go around, and there's sort of two parts to it. And we sort of took some inspiration from games like Clank and Ink and Gold and Curse of the Temple, things like that, with a little bit of a pressure luck, thing like that, where basically what you need to do is you have to go around and collect snapshots from different parts of the island, and this way we can incentivize players to go to the different parts of the island instead of just staying in one area or just going to one area. We have this beautiful, huge 3D island. We want people running all over it. And so that's the way we incentivize that. And then the other thing is that's sort of the essentially a requirement to get to back to the helipad to leave the island. But then the winner is the one who gets the most treasure. And so there we have a little bit of a set collection thing where you're gathering treasures as you go, and then certain treasures are valued certain ways, and you just add up the treasures.
Man, I want to play this. Is it here? It's not
No.
here. I know it's not here. All right, so why plastic marbles instead of glass? Wouldn't glass be faster?
I didn't say anything about plastic marbles. That was the original.
No, he said the
game.
original was plastic.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
No, we're not, yeah.
But see, one of the things I'm thinking about marbles is they have to be right. Like if the marbles get messed up in manufacturing or changed slightly, that might affect the balance of the game. This game feels like it's fragile on a lot of levels. Like you need to make sure it's right all the way down.
It's interesting. I wonder because in a way it might be interesting to have sort of an asymmetrical marble. But yeah, we're not. I wouldn't say plastic. We haven't revealed that yet.
Yeah, they're made of silly putty.
Yeah.
So with all this 3D experience in the bag, will you do a restoration of Heroescape? I'm not asking for me. I'm asking because it.
Yeah, Heroescape is not going to happen.
Believe me, I ask all the time.
I never say never. I hate to do it, especially. We're always exploring. We worked on Fireball Island for a year to get the right to do it. So I never want to rule anything out. But there's a lot of hurdles to Heroescape that make it almost impossible. Not the least of which that interlocking terrain, which is sort of one of the key things. Like if I were saying what's the soul of the game of Heroescape, that terrain is a big part of it, and that's under patent. So that's just something we can't.
Even if it wasn't under patent, there is also the aspect of plastic, the expensive plastics,
sure,
right? That Hasbro was able to pull that off, and they pulled that off almost 15 years ago or so. Plastics have gone up tremendously, and if you are not able to put in millions and millions of dollars, the cost of just that terrain would be so expensive. And as we see, when they pulled that terrain from Magic Gathering, the board game,
right.
So
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't want to ever rule anything out, but we'd love to do it, obviously.
The way I sleep at night is I just assume every time he says that he's lying. So we can hope. Let's see. The first. Okay. What games get requested the most for you to restore?
Well, Fireball Island was our number one for. So just to be clear, if you go to our website, at the very top of our website, it says, what game would you like us to bring back? It's right at the top there. Takes 2 seconds. We love to see that kind of feedback and see what people are interested in and why, what they liked about those games. So Fireball Island was our number one by a long shot for the first year or so that we were doing this, and then obviously after we announced, we stopped getting requests for it for the most part. We still every once in a while.
I got someone like, would you do this game?
Yeah, we still get people who request, do Stop Thief. Okay, sure. I'll get right on it. But our number one now, there's 2 that are neck and neck. It's you could probably guess, Dark Tower and Hero Quest are our 2 top requests.
See, now Hero Quest is a different beast than Hero Escape because it's essentially, although Hero Quest has gone through some licensing stuff because Games Workshop took it and made Advanced Heroes.
There is a lot of interest. So that's sort of the fun part of my job. Of people who don't know, I'm an attorney by trade, and I practiced law for 20 some odd years, doing civil litigation and debt collection and all this soul-sucking stuff. But now I get
now he's giving back.
Now I get to use my powers for good, and it's really much more interesting, like super interesting stuff for me. So yeah, I'm always like noodling around and seeing what we can come up with. But yeah, those are the 2 most requested. Hero Quest is interesting. There's trademark issues. There's copyright issues. There's Games Workshop setting material. All kinds of stuff going on. We got the designers involved and all kinds of stuff. Again, we'd love to do both of those. They're obviously are very highly requested. Then we get Omega Virus is one we get a lot. Thunder Road, another common one.
Thunder Road is one I would.
Atmosphere and Nightmare, that's another one that's people have been requesting a lot lately. So that's a VHS one.
Yeah, well,
I think I might like to take a crack at a VHS game sometime. It might be neat.
Well, it's interesting because VHS is obviously dead. DVD isn't too far behind.
Right.
Because they just announced this year CDs are done.
Yeah.
So DVDs are next, and Blu-ray, eventually it's going to have to be something on the internet or what have you. All right. Adam and Wallace. I don't understand that question. Do you understand that?
What question?
How are Adam and Wallace coming along?
Oh yeah, those are our are our project code names. So yeah, that's interesting. So I have this. I sort of get made fun a lot from the rest of the team. I'm obsessed with coming up with like the perfect project code names. So for Fireball Island, it was Project Alabaster because Alabaster is like marble and it was marbles. So I have to have something that's like for me like just clicks, but is not. So I'm terrified that someone's going to crack my code there. So Project Adam is a project that I have been working on for over a year. It is sort of my pet project. I am super excited about it. I did have a major design breakthrough, as it were. I just haven't had the time to do the iterating and stuff necessary to get it played, but I'm close. So it's coming along nicely. And then Project Wallace is one I'm really excited about. It's one we got requested quite a bit, not quite up to the other ones, but it's a game I played a lot as a kid. That one's essentially in the bag, and all the rights and everything are all done. And we did a lot of early design work, and then we put everything on hold to work on Fireball Island. So as soon as Fireball Island is done, we get to start working on some other projects. We have Project Samson is still in the works. That one we're working real hard on. I'm excited to announce that one.
I know one of these, but I don't know any of the code names.
Yeah.
So one thing I asked you this off camera one time was like, how far back do you go? Like, how long does a game need to be out of print before Restoration Games considers restoring it?
So we don't have a hard and fast rule, but our guideline is 15 years out of print. It just seems like a nice number, and it sort of gives us the right set of stuff, sort of pool of games to look at. Yeah, so that's sort of our general guideline.
All right, well, we don't want to be here too long because I'm going to go grab other people, but you recently announced a couple other games besides Fireball Island. One you just showed here yesterday. We'll have a video of it next week. That was
Dinosaur Tea Party.
Dinosaur Tea Party, which is a reprint of what?
Who's It from 1976, which is like
I know that game's 41 years old.
There you go.
Well, Who's It? I don't think I've ever played that one.
It's a slightly meatier version with multiple players, 3 to 5 players, of Guess Who. So it's a very sort of simple, straightforward deduction game. 98% of the fun is in the name Dinosaur Tea Party. The art's amazing, and basically just asking questions as a British dinosaur, as a fancy dinosaur. That's 98% of the fun. But we actually demoed it last night, and people were eating it up. So it was.
Now that one's not a Kickstarter.
No, that's going straight to retail. It'll release at Gen Con, and it's the same size box as Indulgent and same price point, $19.95. So, I mean, it's a filler game.
Also, if you missed it, Stop Thief, which is a game you came out with last year, now has a full co-op mode, which is free, right? You already have the game. You just download this and...
Yep, you just update the app, and then there is a PDF with the rule sheet. The rules are also in the app, but it might be easier to read it in the PDF and download that. And everyone who plays the co-op mode thinks it's better than competitive mode. It just sort of clicks. And I wonder, I haven't talked to him, but I wonder if Dr. Doyle, if he had sort of been designing that game today, if he would have done it as a co-op game. I mean, there weren't really co-op games in 1976, so.
Well, co-op games are big. I was just on Kickstarter. There's a lot of co-opness there. Yeah, and also there's a lot of other things too. People have been mentioning a couple games here that I'm thinking. I think that game is actually still in print every other year. Some of these games that Hasbro, Milton Bradley, and Parker Brothers, it's all Hasbro now. They still have the rights, and every once in a while they'll release a new version of that game or a quote-unquote classic version of that game.
Like,
Life is an old game, but it's still in print every so often. They print another version of Life.
Yeah, we got a lot of requests for Monopoly. I get the concept. I suppose they want us to fix Monopoly, but that's not going to happen.
And the other thing you showed off is Downforce. When's the expansions?
Yeah,
when are they coming out?
The expansion is coming out. It should be June or July. I don't know the exact street date yet. It is actually being run hot off the presses as we speak. It's being manufactured, and it's got to come over on a slow boat from China. So.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Alrighty, well, thanks for coming on and answering a few of these questions. Folks, if you're watching this, I'm going to be doing more of these throughout the day if I can find people to pull on. Or maybe it will just be me. I can't tell you when they end. It could be in 10 minutes. It could be in 2 hours. Who knows? But keep an eye on our channel feed. Thanks, Justin, for coming on.
Thank you very much.
And obviously, you will see Fireball Island as soon as I get it. You'll see something about Fireball Island at some point on our channel. And again, it's coming out April 3rd.
Kickstarter, April 3rd.
Tuesday, because all good Kickstarters start on Tuesdays.
Indeed.
Alrighty, until next time, I'm Tom Vasel.
Justin Jacobson.
We'll see you guys later.